Hey guys, welcome back. This is the third installment, the final installment of this hood. Happy with the way it turned out. First time ever doing one. Yeah, so let's wrap this one up. Back at the shop, got the line scribed. We're good to go up here. Starting down here, I'm gonna put this half by half right on this edge here. Run it down there. There's gonna be a return on here. I drew the line with a ballpoint pen. I use a little drill bit, a sharp drill bit, to get the center on this rather than hit it with a punch. I'm afraid it might dent. So I can work it around and make sure it stays in the center. I'm gonna drill these out to 5/16. I'll plug weld the back. Situation here, I used 1/4 inch on here because I wanted an edge. I didn't want just a thin piece of sheet metal there. I wanted something that was a little more substantial. Luckily I did, because this piece of stainless that comes around here, it wraps around this other piece. So this is flush up here, but it's recessed a little bit just because it's another layer. So I'm glad I did that. But now what I'm gonna have to do is I'll have to weld the bottom. So I'll V out like 1 inch here and there. Center will space them out 5 probably along here. Similar to the layout on the holes there. I'll put a little weld in there and grind it flat, so you don't really see it. So I'm gonna do that next. Okay, starting on the lower trim, it's half by half cold roll. Cut these pieces, they're 1/4 long, just so I can have a little bit of overhang here. It's easier to grind this off once it's welded than it is to try to build this up square. So it's good to have this a little long here. I chamfered 3 sides of this piece here. I cut it 1/8 inch short, so I have a little bit of a gap in there. Also too, I left it just a little shy of the line. I don't want it to run into the cabinet before it gets tight, and I don't want to smash on the cabinet because it'll mess up the finish, and you don't want that. So before I did that though, I clamped this piece on just to make sure everything's square. This little lip here kind of holds it square, but it still has a little bit of movement. So just to reassure that that's square, because that's square. So it has to be square to go in the hole. Cut this side, same thing, lined up, squared up. I'm going to tack them on here. I'm going to take them off. I'm going to clamp them down, and then I'm going to weld them fully. Hopefully they stay reasonably square and straight. I'm going to do both pieces off of this. Like I said, I'm just going to tack them in place just to make sure they fit nice. Take them off, finish them, sand them, get them all pimped. And I'm going to do that same thing on this whole bottom again. It's pretty nice, but I'm going to go over it one more time before I slide those on, because once that's on, you can't do a nice uniform job in there. It has to be uniform underneath. You can't come back and try to touch it up. It just doesn't work. You'll get in there and it stops, and there's straight lines and scratches and stuff that you probably won't see, but why take the chance? So I'm gonna get those on, and then I'll get them made and sitting on here, and then weld them on. So that's next. Got a little rain, which we need. Central California needs it bad. So anyway, smoothed up, clamped on, did a little V. It's all flush. I put a little clamp on here, and I pushed up on that a little bit to maybe try to get a little bow out of it while I'm welding it. Just make sure it doesn't bow in any, hopefully. So I'm gonna weld these up. I'll grind that smooth and then sand all this with 80 grit. Okay, so the bottom's on. Looks good. A little more gap here than I would like, but it is what it is. I can't really fix it. I don't know why I did that. It rocked up a little, maybe pulled a little bit when I welded it. I don't know. Also too, it looks like it might have bowed a little bit, like it's wider in the middle here. I'm gonna take this out and check and see how straight these are. If I feel like it can come in, I'll take one of those pipe clamp and I'll just squeeze it and tweak it a little bit. That will also probably take out a little of that bow. It's still there, it's persistent, but it's not so bad. I'll get that out eventually. So that's next. I'm gonna, oh yeah, I gotta do this side now. It'll be a different situation altogether. Trying to plug weld these and make sure they stay sturdy with this thicker steel. But we'll just burn it in, get it nice and hot. So what will happen though probably is there'll be a heat rainbow around that, but I'm not worried about that because the plating will cover that. So I'm not concerned with the discoloration. I'm just concerned with scratches or uneven sanding. So happy so far. A couple of things that are bothering me, but I'm kind of a freak. So by the time it's all said and done, it'll all be dead nuts. Part done. This part. Now there's 4 bands, 1/8 inch by 1 inch. They're gonna run up here, 2 on each end and evenly spaced. That's next. I don't know. We'll see how it goes. I'm not. I bought some little bedazzle bolts instead of rivets, so we'll see how that looks, but it'll be all right. So that's next. We're gonna do some measuring on here, roll them in the roll, see how nice they fit. Hopefully they fit real nice. There's like a little bit of a flat spot right here that you can't really tell, but if I can get it to fit in there nice, I'll try just bolting it on. If not, I'll drill through and plug weld from the back and suck up those little bit of low spots. We'll see. Play it by ear. So there's one, it's just sitting on here. I just got this little clamp holding it in place. I ground that tip here to get it to sit flat on there, keep this from having a weird edge. So it'll bolt up nice. So I'm letting it run long. I'm gonna get the other 3 up, and then I'll figure out if I'm gonna bolt them on first and then figure the height. I'll probably do that. So all the other ones are partially done. They're all gonna run long. So that was about 10 minutes, so it shouldn't take that long. And then I'll bolt those things on. Front decorative bands are on. Turned out good, fit nice. Got them cut to the height they need to be for the, you can actually still see the scribe line. Yeah, right there, it gets your reflection. So now it's off to zinc plating. I didn't want to go, I've never done one of these before. It's my first one, and I don't have the apparatus to do a blind rivet like that. I didn't want to deal with the learning curve and all the stuff that went along with that. I'm sure I probably told you, but I'm going to show you. I bought these little, they're like bedazzle rivets off of Amazon. They have this little screw that goes in the back. When I got them, I didn't even realize that they had this little shoulder on here. So I had to put them, chuck them up in a drill, and I sanded that off on the belt sander. They're brass, so it went pretty easy. So they look like rivets, a little rounder, but they're okay. They're oxidized, I guess, already. I'm gonna leave them shiny like that just because, you know, it'll all turn one color. So the fit turned out okay on these. The rivets look cool. The gap turned out. So yeah, I'm happy. There's the screws on the inside. So overall, I'm happy. There is a little bit of a space there, but when this gets oxidized, it'll all turn black and then it'll disappear. I mean, you really got to eyeball it. So now what I'm going to do is I figured out I can drill a hole. I'll drill a hole in the center here of this. I'll probably come up like 1 inch or whatever, just so I can get a screw in there. I haven't mounted this yet, so now is the time to mount it. When it's all done, I'm going to lay it on its back. I'm going to drill a hole here. I'm going to weld a tab on the inside of that lip there. I won't be able to get up there with the drill, but I'll be able to mark it, take it apart, drill and tap it so that it holds that front up. Because all the weight is supported by the back and it's just sheet metal. I don't know what they do on wood and stuff. Maybe they like nail a little cleat on there or something. I could have made something that bolts up underneath probably. But anyway, so yeah, off to the plater. All right, getting ready to bolt this in. I have it all lined up. Got a pretty good gap all the way around, pretty consistent. It looks big, and it is a little big, but there's freaking rivets back here. So I needed some room. I could have probably went a little bit smaller, but you don't really see it unless you like really get down underneath there and look. But yeah, so I'm gonna line it all back up. I'm going to drill and tap those holes. I went ahead and welded that tab in the top here. You can see the discoloration. I drilled a hole up in there. So yeah, I'll be happy. It'll be able to go in where it's supposed to go. So I'll probably have to go out there for the install though, just so that, because those guys aren't used to doing that. But yeah, going to the plater. That's next. Okay, 1 week later, picking it up at the plater. This is what the zinc looks like. See, it's nice and smooth finish on here. There's a little bit of running and stuff for the rivets, but that won't matter because it gets oxidized. So yeah, pretty happy with it. So we got a nice even finish to start with, and it will keep it from rusting. So I'm gonna get it back to the shop and start putting a finish on it. All right, back at the shop. From the earlier video, it was really pretty smooth and even. After I got back, like the sun got on it or whatever, once I got back here, it had where you could see where they had blown it. It was weird. It must have been some solution on there and the sun did something. So I just wiped it off with lacquer thinner. I went over real easy with triple aught steel wool, got it back to clean. I'm going to start oxidizing it now. I'm using the Metal Finishes Plus Midnight Black. I'm wearing a respirator, using this $24 Harbor Freight spray gun. I'm gonna turn it way down so it barely comes out. So I just wanna, that acid I reduced 100% with water. It's easier to keep going and getting it darker than it is to bring it back. So I'm gonna start out real easy and light. You don't want any runs. It's gonna be like water, right? So you don't need enough on there to bring the droplets together and cause it to run. So you're just gonna mist it on really light and just keep going over it. I'm gonna go over at different angles and see how it goes. So it's my first one, but we can figure it out. So yeah, make sure you wear a respirator. I use paper masks for a lot of stuff, but this stuff it's acid. I don't know what it'll do. Clean your lungs, you know, like a good cleaning, like a disinfectant, maybe a bright light. Don't want to do that. So I'm gonna set up a camera and we'll try it out. All right, I'm gonna start spraying this. I'm barely gonna put anything on there. Just really light and slow. All right, this piece of shit gun will not dial down enough. So I really have to just trigger it. So I gotta be really careful. We'll let that dry, and then we'll come back and just keep going over it like that. So I'll check back. I put a lot of coats on it, really thin, just like shooting at a pretty steep angle, trying to get in here. Still, you can see it doesn't get like down here, so I'm gonna start working more of a front view here. I've been coming at a steep angle and it's getting the side here good, but I'm not, so I'm gonna shoot straight on to get that on there. But I did run over it with a Scotch-Brite in the center a little bit to start giving it the antique-y part. The Scotch-Brite I used was a red, but it was older. You don't want to use a fresh new one, it'll be too aggressive. So I got an older one that was just kind of wore out, and I'm going over it real light. I'll come back later with some steel wool and even it out. But the whole idea behind this is an old hood. It's been around for 100 years, been used a lot. We clean it, but we can't get in here. We can't get tight in here. We're not super cleaner. We're not getting in here with Q-tips. We're just giving it a wipe down. So as time goes on, this gets more jacked, dirty, and this stays cleaner. So that's the whole idea. So I'm going to do a little more spraying, and then I'm going to call the owner and see if I get to decide if it's good enough or not. She might have to come down here and look at it. So that's next. All right, this is where it gets a little artsy-fartsy. So couldn't really get in there like I wanted. So I went and I got some, I had to have some trim black. This stuff I talk about all the time. This is really thin down. This has been around a while. When it gets this low, it's like hardly any paint in there. So I put some of that in a bunch of lacquer thinner, probably 4-to-1 lacquer thinner to that stuff that it's already thinned down. As a matter of fact, I put like 3 or 4 coats over this, and you can still see the variations in the color. So this is what it looked like before. Now it's just a shade darker. Same thing with these, you know, just trying to give it a little darker. So I shot in here as tight as I could, barely, you know, like an airbrush, if you will. And then I let it dry, and I came back with the steel wool. So now I've rubbed through this edge like I want. I polished the head like I want, and it's dark in the center like I want. So it's really close. It's hard to see in this picture. It'll look better, I mean, with the light behind me and everything. This way it's not so bad. But so now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna come back with the acid again and just give it a few more passes just to try to, you know, bring this a little more gradual. It's pretty freaking good, honestly. I could just run it like this, but I'm going to not leave it alone because I can't leave stuff alone. And, you know, sometimes you just gotta say win, and I think it's win actually. I might just give it I might just give it a little bit. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna lacquer it just to protect the shading and whatever. It's durable, it's not going anywhere. I mean, you have to get after it with steel wool, and it barely even does anything to it. As long as she, you know, cleans it with a 409 and a soft towel and doesn't use anything abrasive on it, it should last forever. The lacquer, I can say, is just to lock in a little bit of the color. So I'm gonna tip it up so I can see what it really looks like, and I'll decide from then. Done, almost. Got to clear it. I'm happy with it. It's acid, steel wool, acid, Scotch-Brite, acid, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth till you get it to where you're happy. It's a lot more big. It's a bigger color difference on the camera than it is in real life. And then when I clear it, I'm gonna just clear it with some matte clear lacquer, super thin, like 300%. It's just to put a little coating on it. If you go too thick, it chips, scratches. You put it on super thin, it lasts forever. It's weird. I've said this before in other videos. Back in the day when they did brass and you know, antique brass doorknobs and stuff, they would lacquer it. The lacquer was so thin they could pour it on it, and it would just run off, and it was so thin that it wouldn't even leave like a drip mark. You might have to come back every once in a while and just touch your finger to it, and it was super durable. So basically the same idea. If it's thicker, it chips, it cracks, it scratches, turns white. You know, when you scratch it turns white. This doesn't do that. So similar to the bench that I did in a previous video, you can check that out if you want. Oh, and since we're here and we're just talking, let's subscribe and let's like this video and comment about how awesome this hood is. So I'm gonna clear it and then I'm gonna install it. All right, here's the finished product. The fan fits really nice. The gap is good. It's flush up here on top where I put that stud. Fits nice on the back. Sides are all good. Super happy for the first time. That's the giant stove I was telling you about. So if you like the video, subscribe, and check me out on Instagram at It's a Metal Thing. See you on the next one.